Andrew Jackson Biography. Andrew Jackson's family moved from Ireland in 1765. Andrew was born 2 years later. His father was killed right before he was born in a logging accident, so his mother raised Andrew and his two older brothers in the home of a relative. As a child, he was considered a bully. When he was 13 years old, he joined the Continental Army during the Revolutionary War as a courier. He and his brother were captured by the British. When he once refused to polish the shoes of a British officer, the officer hit him with a sword and left scars that would remain the rest of his life. There were inward, unseen scars as a result of the war. He lost his older brother from the war, and his mother also died as a result of cholera, which is an illness. When he was 15 years old, Jackson received an inheritance from his grandfather, who had lived in Ireland. Being young and inexperienced, he was unable to handle the windfall and spent the entire amount in a week's time. He studied law and became a lawyer at the age of 20. He headed west to Tennessee to seek his fortune. His destination was Nashville, Tennessee, and there he met Rachel Robards. Rachel was married but separated, and she thought her husband had obtained a divorce. Unfortunately, she was mistaken about the finality of the divorce. It took a while, but eventually it worked out and they were married. In 1796, he served in Congress as a state representative from the state of Tennessee, then again in 1823. In 1805, there was a dispute on a bet on a horse with a Mr. Irwin. A pistol duel ensued between Jackson and Mr. Irwin's son-in-law, Charles Dickinson. It was agreed that Dickinson would shoot his pistol first. His shot hit Jackson and wounded him, but he didn't die. Jackson's first attempt to fire failed. He took aim again and fired a shot at Dickinson. The man survived for a few hours but died. This duel was only one of many. In 1812, the United States declared war on Great Britain. Andrew Jackson was the commander of the Tennessee militia. Their mission was to defeat the Creek Native American warriors who had sided with the British. At one point, Jackson's soldiers threatened mutiny. He said he would kill them if they left. Previous threats had been carried out, so the mutiny did not occur. In March of 1814, he cornered the Creek Native Americans in Alabama. None of the 1,000 Creeks surrendered, and almost all were killed in the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. The Tallapoosa River ran red with the blood of those who had been slaughtered. Andrew Jackson was known as Old Hickory. He was as tough as a hickory stick and had an unbending will. Yet there was a soft side to him. When marching, he preferred to walk with the troops and let the wounded soldiers ride on the horses. The last major battle of the War of 1812 would take place in New Orleans, and Jackson would become famous. Jackson teamed up with the French pirate Jean Lafitte and the Free African Americans of New Orleans. Jackson had about 4,500 men and was outnumbered 3-1 by the British. The British thought it was going to be an easy win, but they were surprised when Jackson and his troops stood their ground. The British would lose hundreds of men, but Jackson only lost 8 soldiers and 13 wounded. Jackson was now a celebrity, went back to Tennessee and his wife Rachel. They never had children of their own, but adopted one of Rachel's nephews and named him Andrew Jackson Jr. They also adopted a young Creek child, Lincoya after his parents had been killed by Jackson's troops. Lincoya died at the age of 17, the same year, 1828, that Rachel died. Rachel's life was different than she thought it would be. She did not know she would spend so much time by herself. She once said her husband spent less than 1/4 of his time under his own roof. During his life, Andrew Jackson became a wealthy man. He owned a plantation, a lot of land, with a home he called the Hermitage. He grew cotton, which was worked by 100 African slaves. They grew cotton, rice, and tobacco. In the South, more land was needed to grow cotton. The need for more land caused issues between the southern states and the Native Americans who occupied the land. Florida was owned by Spain during this time. In 1817, Jackson invaded Florida in pursuit of Native Americans. He had been instructed by President Monroe not to do so, but he did it anyway. 2 British officers were killed. Henry Clay called on Congress to censure Jackson, but they refused. One time, an overseer, the plantation boss, killed one of Andrew Jackson's enslaved men. Jackson wanted the overseer tried for murder and went to extraordinary lengths to have the event investigated. During this time, killing an enslaved person was illegal, but the murderer was rarely punished, and the death of an enslaved person, if an accident or the result of punishment, was legal. While Jackson never publicly said so, his actions appear to demonstrate that he was greatly upset by the enslaved man's death. He went beyond what would have been considered normal for those times in trying to get the overseer convicted of murder. He was President of the United States from March 4th, 1829 to March 4th, 1837. Jackson died at the age of 78 from heart failure. Word bank for crossword. Ireland, Tennessee, Rachel, representative, horse, militia, horseshoe bend, Old Hickory, New Orleans, Lincoya, the Hermitage, Florida.